כבר הזכרנו לעיל, we already explained above in Mishnah there's a difference between Eruv Chatzerot and Eruv Mevuot. And we already explained שאירוב חצרות אין מערבים אלא בפת. That courtyards, that houses of share a courtyard, you have to make the Eruv with bread. ואילו בשיתופי מבואות, and when it comes to making a street between many courtyards, משתתפים גם ביין או בדברי מזון אחרים. You're allowed to use wine or any other kind of food. אמנם אם נשתתפו בפת, but if they used bread for the street, יש לשיתוף חשיבות יתרה. Then it's extra important, and אין בני החצרות צריכים לערב עירוב חצרות. And then you don't have to make עירוב חצרות. So like this. Usually you need to do both.
Right.
You need to do the street and one for the courtyard. Over here, if you do for the courtyard with bread, everybody does. Yeah, with not the courtyard. Everybody does the street with bread. You don't need the courtyards. All the courtyards open up to the street. Each individual puts the bread in the street. It's like they all put together the streets and the courtyards all together now.
And what if you do the first in the house with the bread? Then you still have to do the street.
The street, that's right. אלא סומכים הם על השיתוף במקום עירוב. They're going to rely on the street עירוב instead of עירוב. אבל אם נשתתפו ביין או בדבר אחר, but if they made the street with wine or any other thing, except bread, צריכים לערב עירובי חצרות. Then they still need to do the עירוב חצרות. ואי סומכים על השיתוף, and they don't rely on the שיתוף, on the street עירוב, they don't rely it for the yard עירוב. כדי, why not? שלא תשתכח תורת עירוב מן התינוקות. So that this kids are going to experience this procedure. Otherwise, they're not going to see it happening, and then they know it's on the bread. הלכה זו בא משנה ללמד, this halacha, the Mishnah comes to teach us, והיינו, and it means, שאין סומכים על השיתוף במקום עירוב, ולא על העירוב במקום שיתוף, that we don't rely one on the other, and not that one on that one. Let's see. 5 חצרות פתוחות זו לזו, ופתוחות למבוי. So you've got 5 courtyards and many houses in each courtyard. And all these courtyards, these 5 courtyards might be open to each other, and they might be open to let's just say they're open to each other like in a row, and then they're open to the street, also of them.
In the back hill.
Or in the front.
In the front.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. שכל חצר פתוחה למבוי. That every courtyard is open into the street. ויש מפרשים שפתוחות למבוי דרך חצר חיצונה. We're going to see later on, it's going to become complicated. Some say we're not talking about that case, we're talking about a different case where the street is on one side and then it's one courtyard to another courtyard to another courtyard to another courtyard to the street. But they're all going through them. Okay. But let's use the easy one, that it's 5 courtyards that are all open to the streets. ערבו בחצרות. So they made an עירוב חצרות. כל החצרות ערבו כל אחת לעצמה. So all the houses in each courtyard made an עירוב to its own courtyard, וגם ערבו כולן זו עם זו. And then the 5 courtyards did with each other also. Each one did with each other. So everybody on the street can walk to everybody. ולא נשתתפו במבוי, but they did not make the street עירוב. לא עשו שיתוף מבוי, they didn't make the street. מותרים בחצרות, then they're permitted in the courtyards, מותר להם לטלטל בחצרות, they're allowed to carry in the courtyards, ואסורים במבוי, but they're not allowed to carry in the street. Yeah?
And this street doesn't have... the city have Eruv, sometimes the city they make Eruv and say, oh yeah, you can carry here. Yeah, we have Eruv and I get
let's say it does.
Huh?
It doesn't matter, even if it does.
Even if it does, you cannot take it out.
No.
So you have to do it.
Yeah, you have to put bread somewhere. All these guys have to put bread.
Or wine.
Or bread or wine, that's
street.
right. Yeah, food.
Food.
ואסורים במבוי, and they are prohibited in the street. אבל אסור להם לטלטל במבוי, but they're not allowed to carry in the street. שאין עירוב החצרות מועיל לשם שיתוף מבוי. So because the shared courtyards don't help them for the street. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara they explain, שמשנתנו כרבי מאיר היא, this Mishnah is according to רבי מאיר, הסובר שצריכים גם עירוב וגם שיתוף. That רבי מאיר holds that you need both. עירוב חצרות ושיתוף מבואות. Why? Why he says you need both? כדי שלא תשתק תורת עירוב ושיתוף מן התינוקות. So that people are going to remember that they have both. Because if you're only going to do שיתוף מבואות, nobody will know the concept of שיתוף חצרות. So it says, so that this way,
separate.
Yeah, because people are always going to do שיתוף מבואות over שיתוף חצרות. Because שיתוף חצרות, you need to do שיתוף חצרות and שיתוף מבואות. So if you just do שיתוף מבואות, and then you live next to your neighbor, you think you automatically, oh, I'm allowed to carry between us. No, it says, no, you're going to forget, so therefore we're going to make you do both. Okay, this is according to Rabbi Meir. ואם נשתתפו במבוי, but it says, if they have a שיתוף in the מבוי, in other words, they have...
If they did it also on the street, King.
Not also, only.
Only in the street.
Only in the street, not also. ואם נשתתפו במבוי, כלומר, or maybe also, maybe you're right. כלומר, אם גם נשתתפו במבוי, I would have understood the Mishnah did differently.
גם.
Yeah, גם. Over here, Bartenura, Kehati says גם, also. I didn't understand it this way. I thought that it's only. כלומר, אם גם נשתתפו, in other words, they do עירוב חצרות and עירוב מבואות, מותרים כאן וכאן. Obviously, they're allowed here and here. גם בחצרות וגם במבוי. Also in the courtyards and also in the מבוי. משנתנו, I think it is like me. משנתנו בא להשמיע, our Mishnah comes to teach, שאפילו לא ערבו החצרות זו עם זו. That even if they didn't make the Eruv between the courtyards, in other words, אלא כל אחת ערבה לעצמה, but every courtyard has an Eruv on its own.
What's so the difference between Eruv on its own and Eruv which eat other?
So Eruv on its own, it means that the 10 houses around this courtyard are allowed to carry in this courtyard.
No, how you do the Eruv? I mean, what's the difference in the Eruv? If you do it
same
for
thing,
yourself...
Same thing. The only difference is, for example...
What, I go to the neighbor and I tell him, you want to do an Eruv with me?
Yeah, if you have 10 houses on this one chatzer, they will all take bread and put it in one house.
Okay. So that's Eruv collectively.
On this chatzer only. But now,
okay.
if this chatzer want to do an Eruv with that chatzer, and there's 5 chatzerot, then you take one bread from each chatzer, and you have to put it in another house. Yeah. Okay. So over here, what happened is that you have 5 chatzerot, let's say, each one did it its own, but it didn't do between each other.
Right.
But then they did with the street. So the street makes it permissible for them now to
carry the chatzerot. Even though in the street they didn't do it with bread, they did it with wine.
We'll have to see.
Okay.
Most probably, yeah. מותרים כאן וכאן, גם בחצרות וגם במבוי. משנתנו בא להשמיע, המשנה comes to teach, שאפילו לא ערבו חצרות זו עם זו. The courtyards did not make an Eruv with each other. אלא כל אחת ערבה לעצמה, but each one made an Eruv for itself. אם נשתתפו במבוי, if they shared the street, מותרים גם בחצרות. They're allowed to use each other's courtyard. שבכגון זה השיתוף עושה את כל החצרות כחצר אחת. Then the שיתוף makes all the courtyards like one courtyard. ולפי פירושו של רבי יונתן שהבאנו לעיל, and according to the explanation of Rabbi Yonatan that brought before, באה המשנה להשמיע, the Mishnah comes to teach, שאף על פי שאין לכל חצר פתוח למבוי, אלא לחיצונה בלבד. That's the other opinion that we say there in a row.
Yeah. The back, כאילו.
מכל מקום, הרי זה נקרא שיתוף ומתרים יותר במבוי. It's still they're allowed to go into the street. Okay, now comes the difficult ones. ערבו בחצרות, so they made עירוב חצרות, ונשתתפו במבוי. and they did a street. ושכח אחד מבני חצר ולא עירב. And one of the people did not make an Eruv. One of the houses.
Eruv בפני עצמו.
An Eruv.
For himself, because they didn't do it between themselves.
They did. They did everything.
Oh, between themselves too? I thought it's the same case.
A good question.
Okay,
let's say to make it easy for us, we learn it both ways.
The question was the case.
Yeah, but so let's say that Shitof Maveot holds for Shitof Chatzerot. So even if he did or he didn't, it still continued to be Chatzerot. So let's see what happens over here. I'm not quite sure which case it is.
Okay, בוא נראה.
אם אנשי חצרות, so, אבל בשיתוף היה לו חלק. He explains. It says he didn't make the courtyard, he didn't give the bread, but for the street, he shared. He shares it he shares in the street. He did an Eruv for the street, but he didn't do an Eruv for the courtyard. So that's what happens. אף על פי שלא ביטל רשותו לבני חצרו. So even though he did not nullify, we already discussed that he's allowed to nullify it, and then he's not allowed to use it, but everybody else is allowed to use it. In this case, he did not nullify it. What happens? מותרים כאן וכאן. We're going to allow him to carry everywhere, also in חצרות. Why? שמה שאמרו חכמים שצריכים גם עירוב וגם שיתוף, it says this is that the sages says. The sages says you need both, also the street and also the courtyard. ואין סומכים על השיתוף במקום עירוב, and you do not rely on the street עירוב in a place of a courtyard עירוב. הטעם הוא, כפי שהוזכרנו לעיל, the reason is like we explained before, כדי שלא תשתכח תורת עירוב מן התינוקות, so that the children are going to remember that there's such a case. וטעם זה אינו אלא כשלא עירבו עד שהחצר ביניהם כלל. And this is when there's no עירוב at all. But over here, everybody made an עירוב, he just forgot. אבל כאן שאנשי החצר עירבו, but over here, all the other people of the courtyard already made an עירוב. אלא שאחד שכח ולא עירב עמהם, and one forgot and did not make an עירוב with them, הרי אין חשש שמא תשתכח תורת עירוב. You're not going to worry that people are going to forget. Yeah, he just reminded himself, because they did it. Yeah? הילקח סומכים על השיתוף. Therefore you don't need to be so strict. You can rely on the שיתוף. וכולם מותרים גם בחצרות וגם במבוי. And therefore everybody is allowed, also in the yards and also in the street. מבני מבוי עירבו חצרות ונשתתפו במבוי. So everybody made עירוב חצרות, and one guy, and everybody also shared with the street, except one guy that did the חצר, did the courtyard, but he forgot the street.
Now we can go out.
Let's see. ולא נשתתף בשיתוף המבוי, so therefore מותרים בחצרות, he'll be allowed to use all the courtyard, שהרי עירבו בהן, ואסורין במבוי, but he'll be prohibited in the courtyard. In other words, the courtyard, the street also includes the courtyard, but the courtyard doesn't include the street. The street is a big one. The courtyard, the streets, there are many courtyards, but the courtyard is not a street.
But it's interesting because if you do it with bread, then it is included.
No, he didn't do it. He didn't do bread at all. He didn't do anything, not wine or not anything in the street. Right. He did not do the street. He forgot the street.
I'm saying in a case that you do in your home, you do all the 5 home. They do one bread to everybody. They don't have to do mavoi.
No, they do.
Or they still have to.
Yeah, they do. But mavoi is not. If they do bread on the mavoi, they don't need to do in the street.
Right. That's
in
what
the courtyard. The opposite.
All of
the opposite. If they do in the street, they don't need to do in the courtyard.
Oh, the opposite. Yeah, okay.
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 ולא נשתתף בשיתוף מבוי, מותרים בחצבות שהרי עירבו בהם. So they're allowed with the street, with the courtyards that they did make an עירוב, ואסורים במבוי, and they're prohibited in a מבוי. שאין עירובי החצרות מועילים למבוי, that the courtyards do not help for the street. ויש מפרשים, there are those who explains, אחד מבני מבוי. It says one of the people of the streets, היינו חצר אחת, which means one courtyard, כלומר ששכחו כל בני חצר אחת, even an entire courtyard forgot to give the bread to the street, ולא נתנו חלק בשיתוף. and not gave a bread in the Shitof. In other words, so the question is, are we talking about the whole courtyard didn't do it, or just an individual within the courtyard who didn't do it? Both ways. אבל בעירוב חצרות נתנו חלקם, but in עירוב חצרות they all gave. מותרים בחצרות ואסורים במבוי. Therefore they're allowed in the courtyards and they're prohibited in מבוי. שאין סומכים על העירוב במקום שיתוף. Because you don't rely on it. In other words, you don't rely on one on the other. כדי שלא תשתכח תורת שיתוף מתינוקות. So that the kids are not going to forget it. אבל אם לא שכחו כל בני החצר להשתתף, אלא אחד מהם בלבד, but if not everybody forgot the שיתוף, but only one of them, הרי הם מותרים במבוי. Then we're going to permit them in the מבוי. Why? שהואילו בני החצר פרט לאחד ששכח, נתנו חלקם בשיתוף. Since everybody in that courtyard gave except him, they gave all, you can say that the one bread also holds for him. שוב, אין חשש שמא תשתכח תורת שיתוף. You're not worried about, because everybody, obviously, your courtyard did it. The fact that you, an individual, forgot, not the end of the world. So therefore, it's not going to be forgotten.
Because they do it in order that this is not going to be forgotten from us.
That's right. In other words, it works.
Okay.
We just penalize you so you don't forget it. שהמבוי לחצרות כחצר לבתים. That the idea behind it is that the street, the logic is it, just like the logic for the street to the courtyards, this is the courtyards to the houses. כשם שאסור להוציא מן הבתים לחצר בלא עירוב, just like you're not allowed to take from your house to the courtyard without an עירוב, כך אסור להוציא מן החצר למבוי בלא שיתוף. That's the same way you're not allowed to take from the courtyard to the street without עירוב. משנתנו בא להשמיע, שאין אומרים, our Mishnah comes to teach, that we do not say, חצר ומבוי רשויות דומות. In other words, there's a difference between the two, don't put them together. שהרי שניהם רשויות משותפות לרבים, because they're both like public domain, like a domain for many, ולכן יש להכל לעשות שיתוף, שלא לעשות שיתוף המבוי. And therefore, some people are going to think not to do שיתוף מבוי. אלא כשם שבית וחצר רשויות שונות הן והם צריכים עירוב, but just like you know that the shared courtyard you need an עירוב, a shared street tell you also need an עירוב. כך חצר ומבוי רשויות שונות הן. Also your courtyard and the street are two different places. שהחצר אינה משותפת אלא לבני אותו החצר, because the courtyard is only used for that people who live around the courtyard. והמבוי משותף לאנשי כל החצרות, ולכן צריך שיתוף. And the מבוי belongs to everybody together. Comes very interesting concept now. It looks like people who live around the courtyard, that even though other people are walking through the courtyard, they have more of a hold on the courtyard than the people who are allowed to walk through the courtyard. Let's take an example. Yeah, let's take the first example that we took. Not the 5 courtyards open to the street. There's 5 courtyards after each other and then the street. In other words, everybody knows that these people on the last courtyard will travel through all the 4th courtyard to get to the street. So, in other words, they almost have rights. They have an easement, let's call it. They're allowed the use of the courtyards. But the people around this particular courtyard have more of a grab in their courtyard than the guys who just walk through. There's people who walk through the courtyard.
They have a grab on what? On the street or on the court?
On the courtyard. They have more shayach. They more belong to the courtyard, even though the other ones also have a belonging. But their belonging is only the right to walk. The guys in the courtyard have more of a right in it.
Because it's his property.
If it's your property, but it's not private property. Think about it.
It's not?
If the guy is allowed to walk through it, how is it your property?
If you're allowed to walk, then there is it's a easement. It's a public. He must have a public easement to walk.
No, so
but he can't go into his property.
So there's no public easement there. That's what you have to remember. There's not a road that goes through it. They're allowed to walk through the... In other words, you're not allowed to stop them from walking through your courtyards. Yeah, it's like they have the right to walk through your courtyards. But that doesn't mean that they have the same right in the courtyard that you do. Yeah. That's why he says you need to do both. You need to do the courtyard and to do the street. Because it's a different kind of rights. In the street, all the 5 have the same rights. In your courtyard, they have the right to walk. They don't have the right to build, for example. You have the right to build stuff in your courtyard. They will not have the right to build in your courtyard, but they will have the right to walk in your courtyard. That's the idea.
Okay.
ביארנו משנתנו לפי הגרסה שלפנינו. We explain this Mishnah according to the opinion 5 חצרות פתוחות זו לזו. That we have 5 courtyards that are open to each other. וכן פרשו רבנו יונתן והמאירי. And this is the way the רבי יונתן והמאירי holds. אבל לדעת רב בגמרא אין גורסים משנינו פתוחות זו לזו. In other words, the Gemara says that they are not open to each other. לפי שאין המבוי ניתר בלחי או בקורה. Because the mavoi can only, like we remember we said, in the mavoi we have to put either on top, a lintel, or a side. אלא אם כן בתים וחצרות פתוחים לתוכו. In other words, this is the argument that we say in the Bible, are they all open to the street? Or is only one of them, or 2 of them open to the street and the other ones are behind them? כלומר, so it's explained שלפחות 2 חצרות פתוחות למבוי, you need at least 2 courtyards who are open into the street, ו2 בתים פתוחים לכל חצר. You need at least 2 houses open inside every courtyard. שאילו בפחות מכן דינו כחצר וצריך מחיצות גמורות. So in less than that, the street is not called the street. It's called the courtyard, and then you need walls, fences, real fences. One lintel or 1 lech is not enough. It's not called zeu. It's only you need, that's the idea. Okay. ואם איפה החצרות פתוחות זו לזו ומעורבות ביניהם, and if the courtyards are open to each other and there's an Eruv between them, הרי הם כחצר אחת. Then they say they are one courtyard, ואין להתיר את המבוי על ידי שיתוף. And cannot permit the מבוי through a שיתוף. מכאן, הרמב"ם ורם ברטנורה ואחרים מפרשים משתנה לפי גרסתו של הרב. So this is the way they explain it according to רב. 5 חצרות פתוחות למבוי. It says 5 courtyards who are opened into the street. Yeah, the way I explained it in the beginning. Yes. Not like the...
Not in the wrong.
Eruv בחצרות, and then they made the courtyard, the Eruv within the courtyards, כל אחת לעצמה, each one on its own, ולא נשתתפו במבוי, and they did not join in the מבוי, מותרים בחצרות, they're permitted in the courtyards, מותרים אנשים כל חצר וחצר לטל בחצרם, they're allowed to carry in their courtyard, שהרי ירבו בה, because they made an Eruv, ואסורים במבוי, and they're prohibited in the מבוי, שאין סומכים על עירוב במקום שיתוף, because you do not rely on the Eruv in a case of שיתוף, ואם נשתתפו במבוי, but if they share the street, לאחר שירבו בחצרות, after ירבו בחצרות, מותרים כאן וכאן, obviously they're allowed over here and here, ירבו בחצרות וכולו כמו שבין אדם. Even if the one forgot, he's still included. So it's actually, the last part is the way we explained it in the beginning. Yeah, because the first part, I think the Mishnah is talking about the 5 courtyards that are open to each other, but they're not opening to the street. Okay.